So I think you can see the right version now. Can you?
Yeah.
Perfect. So off we go then. So I'm going to present the work I've been doing for around 5 to 6 years in 20 minutes. So please bear with me. And now I can't see any questions. If you have any questions and you write it in the chat, I can't see it now, but hopefully we can discuss it together when we are split into breakout rooms. So the title of the presentation is Moving Beyond Internal Affairs, Making Sense of Principles, Leadership Practices in Collaboration for School Improvement. And it is the title of my compilation thesis from 2019, the end of 2019. And the beautiful image is from my home village here in mid-Sweden in the high coast area. And if you ever come to Sweden, please come and visit me. So, and I just made my presentation of myself, so I won't say anything more about that. This is how the thesis looks as a book. It focuses on principles, leadership practices when local schools collaborate beyond school with different external actors in the surrounding community. And I have given my presentation to Deb, so you will be able to get it later, and then you also have the digital version online if you are interested in learning more. So I have tried to make this presentation a bit more popular science-based, so I won't take up the whole afternoon. So then I started out with what's the study about? It's about principles, leadership practices, and it's about collaboration with external actors for school improvement. More specifically, it's about when 3 schools collaborate in different ways. And one study is about international collaboration with schools. Another is about when private companies collaborate with schools. And one focus is when schools collaborate with one university. So there is a growing body of initiatives that aims to connect school improvement and innovation with other schools and educational settings in order to move ideas and practices around the system through various networks and collaboratives. And different and previous research emphasized that external support and partnerships with other schools and networks can support collective learning and professional learning communities to try to strengthen schools' improvement capacity. And that is the ground of the study. And just if you're interested in looking into some of the sub-studies, it's 4 articles and 1 umbrella text or a quote. This is the 4 articles. I just wanted you to see them. And if you're interested, you can download them later. So if I would say something as an introduction, I think if you're in this group, you know a lot of these things, but I just want to try to frame what I'm presenting. We all know that school leadership and school improvement are emphasized by political representatives, researchers, as well as practitioners. And as important if the school is to meet future requirements and allow all children and young people to develop and achieve the goals in the curriculum. And during the last years, there has been an increased attention to collaboration and networking as school improvement strategies in a lot of countries. But in Sweden, collaboration with external actors and partnerships between schools and the local community are not as widespread as they are in other countries. For example, if you compare it to the US or England, we have some examples of collaborative, I can't find the right word. We have some examples of beyond school collaborations in Sweden. For example, collaboration between universities and schools are a rather common strategy for school improvement and school development in different ways. And we can see some initiatives going in a similar direction when we look at external collaboration. For example, we have some examples of international collaboration and collaboration with parents and companies and so on in the local community. But it's not so common, and that's why it was of interest to study. And when it comes to research, it's a rather unexplored area within the Swedish context. And if we would then ask ourselves how an increased focus on collaboration and networking can be understood, I thought that on one hand, an increased focus on collaboration and networking in school improvement processes can be seen as changes in the understanding of how we see learning, and particularly benefits of collaborative learning. But on the other hand, it could also be seen in the light of institutional pressure on schools, both from the state, government, and other regulatory organizations. Because the emphasis on a school's collaboration with the surrounding community or society is something that is seen in different documents. It's something that policy stresses as one way of improving schools. So if we then move on to the principal's role and responsibility in Swedish school, the principals in let's see, like that. Principals in Sweden, they are responsible for improving their schools in accordance with the idea in the National Education Act, the school law. And previous research has shown that the principal are in a tension between a government task and a municipal task, and between management and activities with pupils, teachers, and other grown-ups, as well as between change and persistence, which poses a really big challenge for them to fulfill their mission. And the principal is emphasized as a key actor in improvement work according to curricula, research, and policy. And that's not maybe so different from other contexts in the world. But in Sweden, principal leadership has also extended to include responsibility for the work environment and personal issues, as well as responsibility for budgeting, marketing, and monitoring the quality of the work and taking action accordingly. And in addition, the principal is responsible for practicing pedagogical leadership and leading the pedagogical work in the school. That's also stated by the school law or the National Education Act. And when I made my thesis, I used an organizational and institutional perspective, and from that perspective it could be framed as institutional pressure on the local school and the formal principal to collaborate more with the surrounding community to improve the school. I have a slide about previous research. I'm not going to talk so much about it because I think you all are very familiar with this research, but I just wanted to say something about the things I marked. We all know that the former leader plays a central role And from research, we also know that developing and supporting collaborative communities is one of the most powerful ways the principal can work with their school and school development. But also that it's problems and it's difficult for the principal to lead school improvement. And the last thing I have already mentioned, that collaboration with the surrounding community can be one way of try to strengthening the local schools school improvement capacity. And there are a lot of collaborative strategies for school improvement, and a lot of it has been researched on. I put up some of them here for you to see. I'm not going to talk so much about them, but you can see what I have written. So if I then move on to the actual study, I was a part of a research and school improvement project for 3 years. We were a research group who, with a research team from the university that collaborated with 3 involved schools. And the more specific project goals were to develop leadership in the schools and try to develop the school's ability to manage and lead improvement processes. And the whole project was run within the framework of a partnership. It was one university, not so hard to figure out which one it was. It was big private companies in the local region, and it was 3 local schools in the mid-Sweden region. And there was application process where several schools could apply to be a part of this project, and then 3 schools were picked out to be a part of the project. And each school was also coupled with one major private company to try to encourage collaboration in areas of leadership and improvement processes, and primarily focused and based on the school's own improvement needs. I'm not sure if the method is of interest to all of you that's listening, but perhaps it could give you a kind of a view of what the study, how I conducted the study. I used a qualitative case study design, and I used semi-structured individual interviews and group interviews. In total, I made 54 interviews with the principals and the teachers at these 3 schools. I used a part of a questionnaire for teachers from the schools. And then I tried to understand everything that I had collected by using qualitative content analysis. But let's go over to the schools and let you know what we did in the project. 3 schools involved. I have renamed them. So one school is C school, grades 0 to 9. And it has about 340 pupils and employs about 50 teachers. And it's located outside the city center in a smaller community close to the industry. And then we have Lake School, grades 0 to 5. It has about 150 pupils and employs about 25 teachers. Also located outside the main town, but another town. In a small community also close to industry. And then we have Mountain School, which is an upper secondary school. It has about 120 pupils and about 25 teachers. And it's located in a sparsely populated municipality in the inlands of northern Sweden. So each school could tell about their improvement needs, but within the framework of leadership and school improvement processes. So in Lake School, they worked with the teachers' leadership development through peer observations and with the support of the university researchers. They also worked with something they called the goal tree, a tool used to communicate the goals of the curriculum with the students. And the collaboration with the private company focused on teachers' leadership and leadership development, as well as a lot of student-centered activities. And the mountain school, the upper secondary school, their principal wanted all of his teachers to work with teacher-led mini projects to be responsible and lead project of their own. He was kind of an entrepreneur and talked a lot about entrepreneurship. That school also worked a lot with internationalization. So that was one focus where they wanted support. And the collaboration with the private company for their school included places for students during their workplace-based learning, because it was an upper secondary school. And it was about training, marketing, and different events in sport activities. This upper secondary school was a school with a special track on sports. And then the third school, C school, grade 0 to 9, they focus a lot on leadership coaching to themselves as principals based on their needs. And they wanted support building a new organization with teacher teams at the school. And this was from the beginning 2 schools commuted as one. And the collaboration with the private and big company at this school centered on teachers' leadership and on mostly on student-centered activities. And if I would mention something else, if we look at collaboration from the university led the project, and one researcher each was a contact person to each school, and the researchers made regular school visits to the schools. And they also, because the project was both a research project as well as an improvement or development project, the researchers that was involved also gave a lot of lectures and presentations of new research based on each school's needs. And every year there was a conference on practice and research for the schools, the universities, and the private companies that was involved. And you could also say that the participating researchers from the university acted as advisors or critical friends to the principals in each school. And the principal themselves, at C school, there were 2 principals, one responsible for grade 0 to 5 and one for 6 to 9. At Lake School, 1 principal, and at Mountain School, 1 principal. But during these 3 years, one of the principals at C School, he was first on sick leave and then he quit. So then there was just 1 principal left, and then she also got sick and were on sick leave. And then at Lake School, there was a change in the principal, so 1 quit and another one turned up. And at Mountain School, it was the same principal. But which I think is of interest is that in the end of the project, every principal at these 3 schools had changed, and they were not still a part of the leadership at their schools. So I know it's not so easy to get a grip on everything we did in the project and or how I made the study, but I thought that that's what's of interest to lift here is what I saw as the most important results. So I tried to put out a few of them here on this slide. First of all, I thought I could see that the principals have had the opportunity to build professional capacity in their schools during these 3 years and to create a supportive organization for learning and to collaborate with various external actors based on the support they got from the private company and the university, the researchers from the university. The principals were co-creators of these external collaborations from the start, and the collaboration were organic in the way that it wasn't set from the start where we exactly where we were going. The outside perspective through different external actors as critical friends was a part of the construction and characterization of the principal's leadership practices during the course of collaboration, which was very interesting to be a part of and to see. The principals widened their perceptions of leadership through this research-based strategy, and during the years they were given a qualitatively different way of reasoning about school development issues and leadership questions. And the teachers, they really made sense of the importance of having a formal leader in this beyond school collaboration. And they also emphasized the importance of having a pedagogical leader that supported them in the learning-oriented parts of the collaboration. Let's see. Now, the principals also had support in their thoughts and their work with leadership and school improvement mostly from the researchers at university, I believe. But that meant that they were both strengthened and confirmed and challenged in their role as the principal for their school. And I also think I could see that it was a way to strengthen the principal in her leadership practices and in her role as a former leader and in the professional practice. I will end with some challenges and possibilities in these collaborations, because if I start to say something about the challenges, that there were of course difficulties with priorities in relation to everything else occurring in the school, and it was rather difficult to find time for the teacher to use for collaboration. There was of course ongoing staff problems, and there were some ongoing internal conflicts in the schools, and there were also different cultures within the schools that affected these different collaborations. And a challenge was also the implementation of the collaborations and the project in itself, because the teachers had there was a lack of teacher influence and participation in the implementation of the collaboration. And of course, which I mentioned earlier, the lack of a present principal due to sick leave and turnovers of principals affected both the ongoing development work and the everyday work in at least 2 out of 3 schools. But of course, there were also possibilities. It was obvious to me that external actors in collaboration, if you have common goals and interests based on the school needs, It really seems like a possible way to support and develop practice in a school. And it was possible for me to see that the development of collective commitments to guide collaboration and to engage in collaborative work, increase in shared responsibility for the work, and to foster some kind of learning-oriented collaboration and research-based knowledge constructions. We could see that norms and values started to move during this different beyond school collaboration during 3 years. And we could also see a development of trust and improvement culture between actors. I have a slide with implications for the principle and the practice, but it's nothing that I haven't really said. I have said it already, so I think I will just say thank you very much for listening and try to stop talking so we can let Natalia and her colleagues in instead. Thank you very much for listening.
That's lovely, Susanne. Thank you for that. That is a really, really useful for all of us and really, really interesting presentation, which we will go to talking about later on. Natalia, have you now seen the sign which says that you're co-host? Because that should have come up now.
Yep.
Great. That was really interesting. Thank you, Susanne. So while Natalia's just putting her slides up, everybody, if you've joined me later on, since we did our timings, I've just put some timings in the chat for you. So we're going to Natalia's presentation now, and then at about 2 o'clock, we'll have a break where you can just stretch your legs and get a new cup of coffee, but don't rush at all, Natalia. You've got plenty of time. We can always tweak the timings if we need to. It's really great to be able to have this report from you. Just so that you all know, this came about because I managed to attend Wells for the first time because it was online, and saw Natalia present a little bit of this, so asked her to come and join us in the rig because I thought it was really relevant to some of the discussions that we have. So Natalia, welcome.
Okay, thank you very much for one more time. And I think that today we're trying to present some country report and discuss about our Russian educational system, new and currently reforms in our education system, and also try to present the results of the last study on instructional leadership in Russia, and also will somehow show you the new model of certification of school principal that was developed 1 year ago and by our team, and now it's on the way to be adopted in their regions. So firstly, what we should say about the Russian education system, that in time when children in Vladivostok go to school, the children of Kaliningrad go to bed. So you should understand that the Russian covers 11 time zones, and also we couldn't talk about the Russia at the homogenic structure, but we tried to sketch the landscape of the Russian educational system first. At present, we have there are over 42,000 public schools and also school principals in the Russian Federation, with only less than 1,000 schools in the private sector. It must be mentioned that the majority of Russian schools are comprehensive, where all the 3 levels of education, primary, secondary, and high schools are presented in one institution. So we have the school principal managed one big institution. The majority of principals are female, are near 89%, and tend to be located in rural areas rather than in large cities. In all, about 60% of principals work in their rural schools, while slightly more than 35 of them are working in the urban ones. About 5% of the schools are located in the two mega cities, Moscow and St. Petersburg. Despite of the majority of students, near 74% live in study of the cities. The age distribution of our school principals reveals that near 93% are over the age of 35 years, with nearly 1/3 having already reached retirement age. So the vast majority of principals have been working over 20 years and have higher pedagogical education. Duration of our compulsory education is 11 years. Children usually enroll in the basic education program between the age of 6 to 8 years old and graduate at the age of 17 or 18. And if we're talking about their recent reforms and the redefining the role of the school principals in Russia, we should say that as a country that has experienced significant social, political, and economical changes in the past few decades after crushing the USSR, now we could see and experiencing a majority of educational transformations. Modern educational reforms in Russia Federation has significantly redefining the role of school principals. Up until the 1990s, school principals in Russia were considered to be mainly administrators, inspectors, caretakers, and they embedded in a strict hierarchical structure of the governments of the whole country. The principal's task was to verify the execution of orders handed down from the government and the Ministry of Education. Both teachers and students' behaviors were standardized. Textbooks and lesson plans were standardized too across the entire country. So each concrete day, every pupil of each grade should open the textbook in a concrete page. So we have a totally centralized system. And finally, in the end of the 1940s, with those implementation of the single uniform for the students. All these reformations represented a shutting of all alternatives and overwhelming unification across both method and the content of the instruction and the pedagogy. Difference in education, all differences were rejected, and as well as the innovation and any experimentation in terms of instruction. And in such a system, the task of the principal was to make sure that the schooling process doesn't deviate from the central plans of the government. And the principles was to be the guarantor of the quality and the achieving of the required results. I'm sorry. And but at the start of the 19th, after the crushing USSR and establishing a market economy, we're moving from totally centralized system to the decentralized one. The principals in 19th were mainly responsible for quality assurance, running an efficient school, and delivering the desired examination results, performing totally as an effective managers. A person who are capable of achieving best results from their given set of the resources. This transition to the market economy forced schools to search for sources for development and even to run like daily affairs. From the end of the 19th, the trends towards school accountability for learning outcomes in the education policy in Russia came when the results were with the low scores of Russian children in the international PISA assessment program. So when Russia will firstly participate in the PISA, we could see and compare our results with the other countries, and our government becoming a new information wave after this assessment. In the slide, various initiatives were implemented, from the country-wide launch of the unified state exam and to the introduction of new federal state educational standards that have before that time. The most recent set of reforms has mirrored some international trends in move towards the centralization process of the system. Firstly, in the start of the 20th, Russian principals have an authority over budgetary and facilities issues, could define the strategy, and are responsible for all the educational operations of the school. And also principals could develop their own educational programs that should be only have a link to their educational standards. According to the new law of education, school become free from state control of the financial, instructional, and staff matters. Also, we have an adoption of per capita funding that giving our principals far greater financial and human resources autonomy and allow the principals to determine how to generate additional funds, how to allocate resources, and how to spend their budget, and the power to recruit the teachers. But in a recent, I think 7 years maybe, we had also seen changes in the core competences required of school principals. Now we are in the process of adopting professional standards for school principal that we haven't had beforehand. But to be honest, this process lasts near, as I said before, 6 or 7 years because of the confrontation between two struggling groups and concepts. One of the groups and the previous ministry, they are focusing on mainly on managerial functions of the principal and trying to build a more centralized system. But the other group, they developed a standard, the draft of the standard, which mostly are correlated with the instructional role of the principal and are giving more autonomy and more decentralization for the whole of the system. And also in 2 years ago, a new strategy for the education system Russia has adopted, and there were adopted also national projects of education, and For the first time in the history, we have the connection between this leadership practices of school leaders and educational results of the student, which are systematically involved in all in all the models. So some decentralization process could be also observed in the certification of school principals. The new model of certifications implies the separation of powers between federal, regional, and municipal levels to ensure the transparency and impartiality of the procedure. Until that time, the federal government hands over the right to determine the nature and frequency of certification for principals to the municipal authorities, to the founder of the schools. If we are talking about the new model, it is the model that was developed by our team, in our Institute of Education. It was the project of the Ministry of Education, and they decided to develop this new model, and our group and our institute produce it. You could see on the slides that our model consists of 3 levels, and in each level we have like the separation of power between the levels. The first phase, the stage of the certification of the certification process, it's a testing. It's a national federal testing, and the federation allocates all their assessment materials, and it totally online, and it's ensuring the transparency of the procedures, so that no regional or municipal government couldn't falsificate the results of the testing, that it could be on a previous model. Now, the second phase, it's management cases, and when the principals and the deputy principals should like through this procedure on the cases, and the experts from the regional levels assessed this stage of their assessment model. And the third phase, it's a preparation and public presentation of project. Principal alone or with his management team prepare and present the project for the experts of the municipal level, and it includes this projects could include the strategy of the school, or presentation of the educational program of the school, or development plan of the school. So it's not like a it's about the real situation of the concrete school, where the principal the head of the school. So this model ensures the transparency of the procedure, as I said before, and it's systematically assessment the candidate from the different perspectives, from the knowledge to concrete competences. And after this assessment procedures, we could develop a unified database of candidates for municipality, region, and also ensuring the rotation and renewal of the personnel. and updating the connection of educational program for school principals basing on the identified difficulties and differences that our school principals have. I think what I should say about this model, that this model was tested accurately in the midst of the pandemic last year, and showed that it can be implemented completely online, which is important for the Russian Federation due to the remoteness of some territories. And also 17 regions took part in this testing and approbation process. But unfortunately, due to the pandemic, the process of implementing the model has been suspended, and discussion are underway whether to adopt it in the current form, in the current model, or to make it more centralized and give most of the powers to the federation. So as you could see, now we are on the way we're trying our country is like balancing between that centralization and decentralization in some reformations. So, and you could see it on their model of their certification and also the standards, and this struggling between these two groups last for like 6 or 7 years. So now we're looking what I have for the next years to understand in which way our system going. So also, however, centralization remains in the dismissal of school principals, and municipal departments of education now had the power to establish or close a school, and to appoint and to dismiss one day without explaining the reason for the school principals. So if you could see our country, like now I think more centralized than decentralized one. Moving forward for the results of our study, and in our university and our Institute of Education, we are conducted a few research last years according the leadership practices of school principals, and we want to look closer to the instructional leadership practices, because we understand that the international trends moving from the managerial functions to the leadership ones, and we want to understand what the situation in Russia now. So in 2 years ago, we started this project, and we use the educational leadership inventory based on the principal instruction management scale developed by Philip Hallinger, and we adopted this instrument to our situation. And I think that most of the group and most of the participants of this seminar familiar with this instrument. This self-inventory is designed to provide a personal profile of educational leadership. It consists of the 12 domains and have a 4 number scale from the almost never to almost always. Our research, our sample of the study, we decided to conduct the study in megapolises, because if we're talking about the innovation and the transition and the transformation firstly adopted in their big cities, and then and only then could go to the rural areas. So the sample of the study presented on the slide, we made it in 4 megapolises, and here you can see the distribution between their these megapolises. Totally we have near 500 principals involved in this research, and near 2,000 of representatives, members of school management teams. But firstly, what we should say before their before we're moving to the results of the study, that when we're talking about instructional leadership in Russia, you should understand that our principals are overloaded with the administrative tasks and the meetings. Here you could see the distribution of the answers for the question that we asked before the main inventory. And principals should indicate the proportion of working time they spend on. This question was it was from the Thales research, and also the distribution of the answers in our study correlates with the results from the Thales 2018. And you could see that near 1/3 of all the time our principals overloaded with administrative tasks, and only about 13 to 15% they spent on curriculum and teaching related tasks that we could connect with the instructional leadership practices. So it's a limitation of the of our study, that we understand that when we're talking about the instructional leadership in Russia, we should understand that most of the principals now, they are mostly overloaded with the managerial functions. So here on the slide, you could see the profiles of 4 megacities, 4 megapolises, A, B, C, D, and the blue line is the profile of the principal, and the red one is the profile of the managerial team of the principal of this concrete schools. And you could see the distribution between these 12 domains. And now we're moving to the main results and interpretation. As you could see on this slide, some of the domains principles, the most of the domains principal distributed work and responsibilities between him or herself and the team. But what statements we could make basing on this data? We could see that principals and their management teams do not position themselves as instructional leaders mostly because of this overloaded of the managerial skills, but they're mostly guided by the tasks formulated by the ministry or municipal government and the resources they provided to accomplish them. But the issues related to the educational process management, educational process management, therefore being addressed at the level of leaders of associations, teachers, methodologists, deputy principals. You could see it on the table, the second column. where the second domain, the learning process, and principal in all region mostly delegates these functions to their management teams. But the domains 9, 10, 11, and 12 they are takes responsibility by themselves. Principals at the same time take their responsibility for professional development of teachers and the staff. And in our big cities, school leaders are guided by the city's supply and officers, considering them to be of high quality and sufficient. So mostly they're responsible for this professional development, and our government have special courses for school principals and the deputy and teachers. So the only thing that do principals, they are basis on the tasks and the objectives of the schools. The principals independently determines who of the teachers and the staff of the school could go to concrete courses, and why and what they will need to learn, and leaving the tasks of organization of the learning process, support teachers to their deputies. And the last 12th domain, the principal as a representative of the founder of the municipal government, and its educational policy takes responsibilities for positioning of the school to stakeholders. So to conclude here, we could say that our principals first mostly overloaded with the managerial tasks, and only taking responsibility for professional development of their teams and teachers, but all the practices connected with the instructional process and management in the sphere of education and pedagogy, they delegate these functions to their deputies, teachers, and the other team. And to conclude the presentation, I want to highlight two more tendencies in school leadership in Russia, that now we are moving from the individual principals' power in school management to distributed responsibility of school leadership team members, and you could see it in our results of the study. And also we like the end of this process, that we could see the increasing number of the independent and diverse principal preparation programs, in terms not the managerial courses and financial and budgetary directions, but we have a new programs in leadership and instructional leadership, and these programs are not only for the school principals, but the school principals and their teams together. So thank you very much for the time. Thanks.